Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to give it a second or two before we kick off, just to let the stragglers in. Just if you can, just type through into the chat just to say that you can hear me, if that's okay. It's just a question mark icon in the right-hand side.
I can hear you, Jeremy.
Yeah, perfect. All right, well, let's kick things off. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our special webinar today on the launch of a new module within Compass, which is called Compass Pulse. So just going to kick straight into things. Today with me, we have Robbie, who heads up our product team and I suppose the development team behind the module that we're going to be taking a look at today. So Robbie, if you can jump in.
Thanks. I'm Robbie. As Jeremy mentioned, or as there on the screen, I'm a product owner at Compass. It's obviously been a lot of different people involved in bringing Pulse to market, but I'm the lucky one in the hot seat today to answer a few questions and try and jump in with some insight where I can.
That's great. Thanks, Robbie. Yeah, it's been fantastic to see the progress you guys have made over the last year or so, which has been great. So, all right, so we're just going to run through a bit of housekeeping really quick before we jump into things. So today, as you're all aware, we are using GoToWebinar. I have to make mention, we're actually coming close to the 500 attendee limit that we have for the webinar, which is awesome. But just to be mindful, if you do have staff members that aren't able to get into the webinar today, just let them know that we will send a copy of the recording to anyone who registers, as well as to anyone that's in the webinar today as well. So that webinar recording will go out about 48 hours after the webinar finishes. It just takes a bit of time for us to format and get the information out. Next, if you do have any questions, what I would say is ideally keep them for the end of the session. We're going to come back towards the end of the session. We'll spend about 10 to 15 minutes or so on questions. So save your questions for then. It'll just make it a little bit easier for our team to run through it. And then also after we finish the webinar today, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how the webinar ran. There's a little bit of a survey. If you can jump in and provide us any feedback, we want to keep running these, and we want them to be as engaging and as beneficial for you as we can. All right, so let's jump across into the agenda. Now, today we're going to be taking a look at really 3 key areas. It's a short webinar. We're going to be looking at about 30 to 40 minutes as a whole. We're going to be spending about 20 minutes on Compass Pulse. We're going to be talking about the pricing side of things. This is an optional extra. And then last, there is the Q&A session. So we'll open that up to schools to answer any questions. All right, well, let's move across. So what is Pulse? Pulse is essentially a data visualization tool. It's going to bring to life information around attendance, Chronicle, and then academic performance as far as learning tasks in these new dashboards. So essentially how you use Pulse, there are schools are managing this in quite a few different ways. So some schools we see at the moment are exporting out data from Compass and then formatting Excel spreadsheets and then sharing it with staff members. What we're designing Pulse to do is essentially bring that back into the software so it's one central place, click of a button, and you can see all of this information at your fingertips. So how you use Pulse in your school, data-driven insights to make smarter decisions within your school community. It's going to obviously help you understand how, when you change policies within the school, how that affects the students, as well as teaching staff and the community as a whole also. And then lastly, I've got there, save your team a bit of time juggling Compass and spreadsheets. As you're all familiar, you create a spreadsheet today, you share it with your staff members. Tomorrow, the data's already out to date. With Pulse, save your team some time, it's all in one place as well. All right, so what we'll do now is we'll jump across to Pulse and we'll take a look at the software in a little bit of detail. So I'm going to go through our live environment now. So I'm in my Compass account. What I'm going to do first off is just talk a little bit about how you get into Pulse. So to get access to Pulse, it is accessible underneath the administration tools dashboard. So to navigate there through the cog across to admin tools, and then from admin tools, what you'll notice is a new tab in the middle here, which is Pulse. Now, just one thing to be aware of, you do have to have Pulse admin on your permissions to get access to the Pulse dashboard. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't publish a dashboard to other staff members within the school for them to see. And we're going to be talking about how you contextualize and share dashboards with other teachers across the school there as well. All right, so let's jump into my Pulse dashboard. So what I've opened up here is just an example dashboard that I had set up before we started the webinar today. So this is just a whole school attendance dashboard. So you can see here, click of the button, I've opened it up. We can see a percentage attendance rate by week straight off the bat. And this data that you're looking at is taken up until yesterday. So it's essentially the data over the last year, or this is 2019 in this example, and it's accessible up until the previous day, which is fantastic. So it's not quite real time, but it's nearly there. So just scrolling down a little bit further, I'm just showing a couple of example widgets that I think will resonate with the group here today. We've got total percentage attendance. We've got attendance by selected absence reason. This is a good one. I know a lot of schools are kind of asking us this question as well, which is great. Configuring the widgets, and we're going to be taking a look at widgets and dashboards in a little bit further detail as we progress forward, and I'll talk about that as we go. We've got an absence watch list, and you can see the total percentage attendance down the bottom here. So before I jump into the widgets, I just want to talk about dashboards across the school. You can see I've got one example of a dashboard. Your school can set up multiple dashboards. So over on the left-hand side here, you can see that I've got a drop down. I've got a search bar as well. So if you have 50 or 100 dashboards, you can search through. I've just got 4 examples in my overview today, and you'll see down the bottom here, you can simply create and add a new dashboard by selecting this button. So very simple, toggle between different dashboards to show different information. So the best way to think of a dashboard is essentially a whiteboard within the school, and you would have your different widgets that you can put up there. I'll let Robbie jump in and talk a little bit about the widgets and essentially the information that they're displaying.
Yeah, I guess every time we talk about Pulse, we say the word widget over and over again, but to sort of clarify exactly what it is, each different tile you see or each different graph is its own widget. So we're just picking 1 or 2 different metrics, which end up being the X and Y axis of the graphs, and we try and present that data in the most useful way. So there's sometimes there's widgets that share metrics and visualize the data in different ways, and sometimes you have the same visualization, the same type of graph, but looking at totally different metrics. So you can add a bunch of different widgets to each dashboard. There's no sort of limits on whether we've set up a specific attendance one here, but you're free to add any different type of widget to any dashboard you'd like.
No, that's great. Thanks, Robbie. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to add a widget onto this dashboard today, just to show you how simple and easy it is. So we just go add widget, top right-hand corner. And what you'll notice is there's a library full of widgets that will give access to your school. There's about 70 or so widgets that are available as of today within Pulse, and they're really going to cover 3 key areas. We're going to be taking a look at Chronicle, we're going to be looking at attendance information, and then lastly, we're going to be taking a look at learning task data as well. I'm sure there will be some questions about what other capabilities we'll have with this module, and we'll take a look at those down the track as well. So just as we're in this screen here, it's very simple. You've got a search bar, and you can start to go through and type in the widget that you're looking for. Now, if you want to understand a little bit more around that widget, we've got obviously the name and a bit of a small description here, but you can actually click on the widget and it will tell you a little bit more detail around what this widget can display. So we can see the context, we can see the configuration, so we can put a start date, end date, and the data source. And then we've got a detailed description of this as well. Now, just something to be aware of, after we finish today, I'm actually going to distribute to you guys a list of the 70 widgets that we currently have in here, so you can see exactly which widgets will be available kind of from day one with Pulse as well, which is great. So let's add this one into the dashboard. We'll click out of here and we'll scroll down now, and you'll notice there's this new present by day. I hit configure widget, and from here, I can start to configure my widget. I'm just going to go through the clicking method, but if you wanted to, you could type into these sections here. I'm just looking at 2019 year. And what you'll notice now is the data is obviously, there's a lot more data than we could display in this one little tile, but I can click and drag to display this information in a little bit more detail. So very simple, click and drag, move things around as you need to, as you can see there. So scroll down here, we've got the percentage present by day now. This is obviously looking at the full school context. What you'll see here is, there are a couple of days there where we had a pretty large amount of days off, which is interesting as well. So it starts to provide, obviously, the school a little bit more context on what's happening there as well. All right, so now what I'm going to look at is we're happy with this layout. We've put a widget in here. We've configured that widget. You can then lock this layout off. And what that will mean is the widgets are locked in place. Staff members can't click and drag and move it around. So it's just essentially now in a locked state. Simple as unlock, and then you can go through and move it around and resize and rescale if you need to as well. So very simple utility of the platform here. What I'm going to take a look at now is some of the other dashboards that we happened to set up before the meeting today. So you'll see here that I've got a whole school behavior dashboard. I'm just going to take a look at a couple of widgets that are in here. We've got reports by location. Those of you that are supporting, say, school-wide positive behavior programs within your school, you would be familiar that reports by location is one of the big 5 reports. Same thing with reports by tier that you can see over here on the right-hand side. So again, you're getting that information at the click of a button directly within Compass now, which is great. And also what you'll notice here is we've got a tier 3 watch list. We've got 6 reports. So we're looking at students with more than 6 reports, and we get a nice breakdown of each of these students also. All right.
I might just jump in there, Jeremy. You can just show by clicking on the word column there on that very top widget that you can change the visualization type on some of these widgets, and the reports by tier just on the right slightly down, you can change that to a table or a pie chart. We've just sort of touched on the attendance and behavior here, just very briefly showing you, and as Jeremy said, we'll have the handout to run through all widgets, but just as a little bit of an overview, within the attendance space and all the data we're looking at there, within that we've got the ability for you to drill down on specific attendance codes. So you can create a widget that might look at every single attendance code together for the whole school, and then you could also choose to look at it, I just want to look at dental appointments, or I just want to look at truancy. So you can really see the difference between which attendance codes are being added at different times of the year or different times of the day for different students. Within all the Chronicle data, you can sort by Chronicle categories, so you can view data, which categories getting the most use, and you can sort of juggle that looking at students, or you can even look at which teachers are using Chronicle categories more. There's widgets where you can drill down again to templates and see which templates within a specific category are being used more than others. And you can also go down to the Chronicle field level, where the one we had up just before was location, which is a Chronicle field. So you can choose, say, your attitude and behavior category, and then look at where those incidents are occurring by the Chronicle field location, and like get all the way down into the nitty-gritty of the data. And that really, we've tried to make it as flexible as we can so that you can look at all as many different things as you could imagine.
That's great. Excellent. Excellent. Thanks, Robbie. So what we're going to do now is, you're all probably wondering at this point, the dashboards that you've seen, it's obviously showing the full school context, right? So we get asked this question quite a bit. How can we now start to segment this by, be that year level, form group, or house group? And we're going to take a look at that now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go across to a couple of example dashboards that I set up earlier. So I've got a form group dashboard as well as a year level dashboard. Again, when I look at it within the Pulse admin tab, I'm actually seeing the full school context. What you can do now is you can actually jump across to the 3 little dot icon over on the right-hand side, and we can publish this dashboard. And what publishing will do, you can see it's as simple as that. What publishing will do now is when we go to the second tab within Pulse Admin, which is our administration page, we can now publish these dashboards across to different pages within Compass, right? So we're going to publish the year level dashboard here, and we're also going to publish the form group dashboard, and then save. Now what will happen is, if I go to, let's go to a form group 02A. If I jump into the form group page, you'll now notice that there's a new tab in Compass, which is Pulse. And if we click into that, what that is going to do now is it's going to contextualize that dashboard specific to this cohort, or this group of students now. So we're only seeing their particular information. So what this really does for your school is it really enables the school leadership team to define the widgets that you think, and the information and data that you think the staff members should be seeing, define that in the dashboard, and then publish it across to the different pages. So it really helps to segment that and control, who's seeing access to what as well. And you can jump on here, you can hit pop out and displays it obviously and a little bit more information as well. But one other thing that I did want to reinforce here, obviously now that we've published this live and we've pushed it across to other staff members within the school, what you will notice is that you can't actually edit any of these widgets, right? So they're getting like a view-only access or a live report of this information. So they can't actually jump in here and change the configuration of the widgets. But to Robbie's point before, they can actually change the view. So if they prefer to view this as a bar for whatever reason instead of column, they can toggle and change these views as well. And the other thing I'd like to reinforce, you can actually take a PNG or an image of this graph and download it if you need to add it to any internal school report. Say you're conducting a planning session, you want to get some of this information out for your staff reports, you can do that as well, which is great. So very easy to segment, very easy to extract out data as well. Robbie, was there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, it's just, there really is a nice separation of layers there where someone with the Pulse admin permission will can stay in the Pulse module and look at everything on a really whole school level. And within that, they can choose to view one year level versus another or one form group versus another. But with these context dashboards out on the Pulse tabs, you can put that information sort of in the hands of your classroom teachers or your year level coordinators. So this one's a good example. So maybe for a primary school where the form group teachers are really responsible for the day-to-day of their 20 to 30 kids. If they've got this absence watch list here on their form group profile page, you can see in the form group column, they're all 2A because this data's, it's been filtered just for the use of the 2A teacher. And so maybe Jeremy, now you could switch to form group 2B and would then see that the form group 2B teacher goes to their own form group page and they only see the information based on the 20 to 30 students in their class. So now we've got all the 2B students and we're getting the sort of the attendance percentages of those students. So a teacher just sort of in a snapshot can look at the information relevant to them. So maybe jump to a year level page, Jeremy, and we'll just show that one in action as well. So Jeremy showed before he was publishing the year level dashboard out. And now this data is contextualizing just to students within the year 10 year level. So all the students on this number of learning tasks table are all year 10 students. So a year 10 coordinator could come to the year 10 page and then they can manipulate this table just like you would in Excel or something. So if you want to view who has overdue learning tasks, Jeremy can just click on the overdue header of that column and we'll sort and yeah, click it again to sort the other way, and you'll be able to quickly identify which students in your year level have overdue learning tasks. So this is a great example of where you would make one dashboard that might have all three attendance, assessment, and Chronicle data all on the one dashboard because it's all information you want to give to the year level coordinator or the form group teacher in these examples. So Jeremy, if you jump back into Pulse and then go to the administration tab, we can quickly show the different areas that are available. So not every widget works in every different context. So you can see we've got class page, subject page, house here, campus dashboards. So for multi-campus schools, the campus dashboard will be really important. And then just jump back to the dashboard builder tab and click on the three dots on any of the widgets and go view details. So this is the same details you're viewing when you're adding a widget. And you can see we've got the context there. So it lists the context that this widget can sort of automatically adapt itself into based on the users within. So this one works on year level. So we put it on a year level dashboard and we know that when it's on the year level dashboard, it'll automatically filter for only students within that year level. Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of great uses there where you choose your staff cohort, maybe that's your form group teachers in a primary school, and you give them the information you want them to just sort of check on a daily basis and stay aware of.
Yeah, excellent. That's great. All right, well, that pretty much concludes the overview of Pulse. We didn't want to spend too much time kind of drilling down into each of the widgets. There are a lot in there. So we take it you're going to start to have some questions. If you can start to type through into our chat box now, that'd be great. And just while you're starting to prepare for that, I'll just talk a little bit around the pricing side of things with Pulse. We have changed the pricing model. So previously, you all may have been aware it was a module-based approach with pricing approach with Compass. We've actually moved to a price per student model. We've moved to that model just to make it a little bit equitable across the board for schools. Obviously, smaller schools not paying the same fee for a module for, say, a larger school. So it's charged at $2 per student for a primary school and $4 for a secondary school. One thing we'd like to say, if you sign up with Pulse before the end of this year, you'll actually get a free implementation and training session on the module as well. So working with either myself or one of the team members here at Compass to implement it into the school, which is great. All right, so let's switch across to some questions. And I do have to say there are a lot of people in the webinar today, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions. We'll do our best to get through as many as we can, but if we don't answer yours, we'll try to get back to you very shortly. So, Robbie, you have access to the questions tab, yes?
Yeah, so we've got a question there about the real-time nature of the data. So the data updates each night. So overnight, new data is pulled in. So we have some widgets in there specifically that target yesterday. So if you want to know how many students were present yesterday, you can view that. But if you were to come on at lunchtime, it's not real-time enough to look at exactly how many kids are at the school right now. You would still use your traditional attendance reports to do that.
Excellent. The next one that we had here is, can you look at an individual student across a range of metrics? At the moment, we don't actually have a student-based dashboard. I'll let Robbie speak to that, but we do get hit with that question a little bit. But Robbie, if you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, so it's not, at the moment, it doesn't have a frame of reference where you have one student and you look at lots of different metrics for that student. But we do have those widgets, which most of them end up in a table form where you're drilling down into specific students. So if you're a classroom teacher and you've got a class of 20 students, you can see the data based on each of those students in the table to see their attendance percentage or how their learning tasks are going. We also do some aggregating of learning task results, but at the moment we don't have sort of the frame of reference where you would go to, you would pick a student, go to their page and see specific data for them.
Yeah, excellent. That's good. The next question that we had here is, will the module become real-time? And is that in the roadmap? So as I mentioned at the start, we're essentially taking a look at the previous day's data and anything before that. But yeah, anything you can add to that, Robbie?
Not too much at this stage. It's something that would be very nice to have in the future, but at the moment, we're still sort of working on building out that widget library instead of moving towards real-time data just yet. And on that widget library, I was going to bring up one where can you draw data into Pulse from analytics? So at the moment, we're finishing off our learning task-based widgets. We've got lots in there on learning task submission, as well as so that submission can be broken down by class and subject. It's also broken down what percentage of overdue learning tasks a student has versus sort of on-time learning tasks. We have result-based ones where we can count the instance of a result. So if you're using an A to E scale, there's no point sort of aggregating those results. Instead, we count the results per student. So you might see one student has 10 instances of an A result and 5 instances of a B versus another student who might have 10 instances of a D result. And then where percentages are used, we aggregate those. So you can look at the average of a whole year level versus another year level, or a whole class versus another class within a subject. So you could pick the English subject and see which class, English A versus English B and that sort of thing. And then we're also currently working on doing analytics as well, where we've started to look at how we can view the NAPLAN data within Pulse, and we're going to expand that, expand all of the learning task offerings also into analytics offerings.
Yeah, that's great. Excellent. The next one that we got here is, do we have any plans to show data around parent and student engagement within Compass?
We do have a plan to look at parents engaging with learning task results. So when a classroom teacher publishes a result for a student and that's visible to the parent, we're going to look at tracking whether what percentage of parents in a class have viewed that learning task or a similar metric to that.
Yeah, excellent. That's good. The next one that we had here, so just having a little bit of a look through. There's a couple that kind of we've touched on already. There was a question, is this an additional cost for Platinum agreement users? If you are a Platinum school and your agreement is still active, that will be included in as a part of that agreement. You've talked about the Pulse data and analytics side of things.
There's a question in there about tracking student subject selections, which is not something we've looked at doing before. It's an interesting idea. What we're going to do is in the Pulse knowledge base article, which I believe, Jeremy, that'll be accessible from every portal, no matter if you've got the module. There'll be a form placed on there where you can sort of submit an idea or a bunch of ideas, or even just a general area that you'd like widgets to look at. So with the handout from this webinar that lists all the widgets, once you've sort of had a browse through that and got an idea of what we've got available, if there's an area that's not there, check back in the knowledge base in a couple of days and we'll have a form up so that you can submit your ideas through.
Yeah, excellent. So the next one here is, can date filtering be dynamic? So date filtering is quite straightforward. We don't have the dynamic filtering in the sense that you say, show this widget based on last week's information. You will actually have to go through and hit configure and then update your date ranges to suit. So if it was a dashboard that you created for monthly information, each month you need to just jump in and update your date periods there to show the previous month. But taking
we do actually have one or two, Jeremy.
Okay, excellent.
Especially the yesterday ones, they look at how many Chronicle entries in a specific category were made yesterday, or attendance rates for yesterday. And then with the dates, you don't need to set the date to finish on today's date just because there's no future data. You would, if you want to compare 2020 to 2019, you can set the dates to cover all of 2020 and all of 2019, and every night the 2020 data will have a day added to it. So you don't need to come in each day to include the new data. You just set your date range off into the future so that it's always bringing in the newest data.
Yeah, excellent. We did get another question around schools have set up their own custom categories for Chronicle. They've asked, will they be available to report on? So absolutely, we just work on the categories that are set up in here. So if your school had set up its own custom ones, you could see that you could select them from this drop down that we've set here.
There was also a question in there based on what determines those tiers. So on this specific widget, these tiers, it's based on some school-wide positive behavior information. So if a student has 0 or 1 reports, they're in the first tier. If they have 2 to 5 reports, they're in the second tier, or 6+ reports, they're in the third tier. But you can determine which Chronicle categories are included in that. So you can specifically target your attitude and behavior type Chronicle entries so that maybe some attendance Chronicle entries don't interfere with that data. And we also have some where you set a threshold. So it might be an attendance based metric where you say, I only want to know about students who have a greater than 10% absence rate or greater than 8% absence rate or anything like that. So that there are some widgets where you control sort of what the threshold is.
Excellent, that's good. So what is the cost for implementation and training of Pulse if you commence in the new year? So we just have a standard training rate. So I believe it's around the $250 mark for a training session. I believe that's around 2 hours. So if you wanted training next year on this module and we wanted us to conduct that training session, it's around that $250 mark off the top of my head.
There's a question there about how soon for the analytics modules, asking sort of 6 to 12 months, within 6 months.
Excellent, that's great. We also got asked a question around progress reporting and semester reports. If you would like to touch on that one, Robbie, as well, is that on the roadmap?
So for the semester report data, as we're running through making analytics widgets now, at the moment in Compass, schools have the ability to view all of their semester report data in an analytics cycle. So if we can sort of get one nice generic analytics widget where you choose from any of your analytics cycles, all of the semester report data would automatically be available through that widget.
Fantastic. All right, I think that is it for today. We've hit the time limit now, and there's still a lot of questions that are coming through. What we will do is, as soon as we finish up, we'll start to collate some of these questions. What we'll probably do is similar to our previous webinars, we'll actually send out a PDF with the questions that were asked, because I think it's beneficial for you all to see. And if you do have any other questions in the meantime, you can feel free to reach out to our team. But that is it for today's session. So if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to our team. You can contact us at training@compass.education or via the support lines today as well. Excellent. Thank you all for joining. And as I said, I'd love to hear a little bit of feedback in the survey after you finish up today. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.